Hey, campfire crew, let's get it on. Creep from My Past, submitted by Cherokee Cobb. I'm going to leave the towns and names, etc. out of this because I'm now just telling people about this. The only other people I told are a cousin, my boyfriend, and his aunt. I'm not ready to tell this to everyone, including people that know him. It was really traumatizing for me, and you'll learn once why I get into the story. I was 16 when my parents moved to this small town, and I was a shy kid who just wanted the day over with, to just go home, so it was really hard to make friends. The town was super nice. No one was bullied. It was literally a dream come true. I'd been constantly bullied until I moved there, so it was nice to actually come out of my shell. I made friends with a new group, super nice kids. But then I made friends with this boy, and he was super nice. We walked home together because we lived close together, and my parents thought he was a nice kid too, and they didn't really like me hanging around boys, being a teen girl. This older teen who was a senior, though, was constantly flirting with me, and me being a curious teen, I was flirting back. This other neighbor that was friends with me, though, didn't really like that. He became constantly clinging, and I mean following any way he could. Waiting outside the bathroom at school for me, walking me to my door, and I didn't notice it at first, but then it clicked, and I began thinking to myself, he needs to stop before my dad murders him. The neighbor friend ended up missing a few months' worth of school, and I got kind of concerned, because he still was my friend at the time, and I just wanted him to stop acting like a clingy boyfriend. He finally came back, and I got to ask him what happened. Here I was thinking he got the flu, or maybe a family matter came up. I was beyond wrong. As calm as ever, he explained that he got into a fight with his dad, and his dad said something that set him off. He tried grabbing his dad's gun, and he said if he hadn't gotten caught, he would have shot his dad. But his dad stopped him and just instantly put him in a mental home so he could calm down. I later found out through his mom, who saw me walking home one day, that he had done this before and had tried so much more that they just had to take a break, because before he tried shooting his dad, he hurt his little sister on purpose, and she ended up in the hospital. I think it was a broken leg. I looked at my friend like he was joking, but he continued to try and get me on his side. He had this crazy look on his face. So I tried making an excuse to get somewhere else, but none of my friends were around, and I didn't have a phone yet to fake a call. So I just agreed with him that his dad had made him mad on purpose to calm him down. Skipping to the next semester, my parents ended up moving closer to my dad's job, in this town an hour from my old town. Weeks went by, and I didn't really talk to my neighbor friend, mainly my two other friends who I considered my best friends. It's now years later and I still have them as friends, and once in a while we catch up on life. I made more friends and got into a bunch of activity groups, including choir. I somehow started talking to my old neighborhood friend again, and don't ask why. I was 16 and missing that small town, and I was constantly trying to get a hold of all my old friends, including him. We had a streak on Snap, and he explained that he had this girlfriend and he seemed a lot better in life, especially with his dad. We got closer together as friends like we were before. He got weird, and we were spilling secrets. I learned new stuff about him, and so did he. I told him how my cousin had raped me when I was 9, and absolutely no one knew at the time except 2 friends from middle school who are still my best and closest friends to this day. I told him how hard it was to trust anyone, and he said I could trust him, and that he was sorry that it happened. I let him in as a close friend, and I really regretted it. He instantly got back to being that clingy ex, but only this time it was worse. He was constantly sending dick pics on Snap, and I told him to stop because I was getting uncomfortable, and he said that I could have it because he broke up with his girlfriend for me. I instantly felt bad, because now some girl was heartbroken that he dated for almost a year, because he probably told her that we were going to date, and she probably hated me now. I told him that I never said I wanted to date him, and that I don't want a boyfriend right now because of the trauma I was going through. He said if I disagreed with him again that he would take another pic of his area and would make sure my parents knew that we were having sex. I told him to knock it off, and he listened and went back to being that supportive friend. But I didn't really talk to him after that. Just kept the streak that we had. I don't know why my brain decided to go on autopilot while I was letting close friends know about my choir concert next week. I sent him a message about it. I instantly regretted it and hoped for the best that maybe he was too busy that night of the choir concert. Of course he wasn't, and he said he already told his parents that he was spending the night at the concert at his grandparents' house. His grandparents and close relatives of my old friends lived in my new town, hence why I was sending invites to old friends. He tried explaining that we could be friends with benefits and have a night together when he got there. I instantly shot him down and said I only wanted to hang out that night with friends and catch up. He said okay and didn't really say anything except the night of the party that he was in town, and headed to the school to catch a good seat. I got there, waved at him, letting him know that I was happy he was there. The concert went by and we were all getting ready to leave, and he instantly found me and gave me a hug. He told me that he wanted to go somewhere more private because of how loud everyone was, and I stupidly agreed. We went behind the school building and were sitting on these top steps. As we were sitting down, he instantly started kissing me, and at first I followed along just to the kissing because it did excite me. It was my first real kiss, but let me tell you, it was wet and sloppy, and eventually it made me want to puke. I broke the kiss and his hand started to roam around my body, him explaining that his grandparents weren't home and that he brought a condom. I pushed his hand away and told him no, and he laughed quietly and got back to kissing, his hands again trying to roam around my body. I grabbed his hands and told him no again, and he whispered in my ear, "I know you want me. You're gonna like it once it happens. I can be your first." He scooted closer, and my heart just suddenly stopped as he slid his hand roughly down my pants, stopping right above my panty line. I was full on panicking. I started to have a panic attack and grabbed onto his hand, and I was too scared to tell him to fuck off and remove his hands. He wasn't a strong kid, but he was stronger than me at the time. And now I work out and work on my upper body core, so I could easily kick his ass if I ever saw him again. He was still trying to get in my pants, and thankfully a car drove by, and it made him draw his hand back and scoot away from me before the people saw us. I took that opportunity and shot up, explaining that my parents were wanting me at home as I glanced at my phone I had recently got. He looked at the clock and agreed. I told him before we met that my parents knew I was going to meet up with him, and he was beyond scared of my dad. He got up and followed me to the end of the road, and I let him lean in for a kiss before I stepped back and just waved him goodbye. He waved goodbye, and I waited till I was around the corner and just broke into tears. I fell on the ground sobbing about what happened and got up to run home. I didn't want my parents knowing about anything. I just never wanted to see him again. But I told my parents it took forever to get home because one of the teens on stage fell and couldn't walk for a minute or something like that, and they approved why I was so late. They knew the time the choir had started and when it was supposed to end. They called my choir teacher and everything, and had super strict parents, one of the reasons why I didn't tell them about it. When I got to my room, I found that this friend had snapped me already, texted me a few times, explaining that it would have gotten fun if that car hadn't drove by. I told him that I never wanted to have sex with him, and that he made me feel scared. Then he said I wasn't a virgin, so it wouldn't have mattered if we had sex. I told him that I was a virgin, and he put a laughing emoji out and said I wasn't because my cousin raped me and took my virginity. He knew not to bring that kind of stuff up, and I instantly cried. He told me it wasn't such a big deal over my cousin, and said that he wanted to be my first instead of my cousin. I instantly blocked him on everything, and he tried a few times to get a hold of me, but I ignored him. Thank God I didn't tell him where I lived so he couldn't stalk me. It took me forever to gain trust in my new friends, and my best friend this day still helps me through hard times. It took me forever to gain trust in my new boyfriend a year after this had happened. I mean, he was just a gentleman when I met him in sophomore year, and it made me question it completely. He's my best friend, and his aunts are the closest people that know me. 7 years, and he's still a really sweet boyfriend to me. As for my other friend, I really hope he got help that he needed. I don't really think of him until now, and I don't try to contact him either. It took me years to get over that and just go forward in life. I have a daughter now, and I'm going to try like heck to make sure she knows it's okay to stand up for herself over boys who try to force what they want, and that it's always her body, her choice. She's almost 2, and she knows no means no, and that you're not touching her or wanting a hug if she doesn't want to. It makes me beyond proud of her and me, especially on how far I've come. Skull in the Water by Lake T. Me and 2 friends went and rented a boat on Lake Okeechobee in Florida. We got a 30-foot pontoon boat that had a cover, although there was no cabin or anything under the main deck. It was winter in South Florida, so it's cold but not too cold, so we just decided to sleep on the boat instead of setting up a camp. We planned on spending 3 days and 2 nights on the lake. We just spent our time drinking, fishing, and playing games. It was sometime on the second night when I just woke up. I was still drunk from our previous activities, but my senses were on overdrive, and I just felt aware of something. I was sleeping towards the back of the boat while my friends were at the front, and it was eerily calm with no waves on the water. We were about 250 feet from shore with land on our port side, and I started scanning the tree line looking for something. There was nothing on land, so I scanned the water on the port side. Nothing. So I scanned the water aft of the boat. Nothing. I didn't want to disturb my friends up front, so I just scanned the water on the starboard side, and that's when I saw it. There was a skull floating in the water with just the eye sockets and part of the nasal cavity, sitting there in the water looking right at me about 50 feet away. An immediate sense of dread took over me. I was the most scared I'd ever been in my life. But then an even worse feeling took over. Calmness and the sudden urge to jump in the water. I had the notion that I would be at home in peace if I just jumped in, and before I could act on it, I think one of my friends stirred in their sleep because I heard a beer bottle start rolling near the front of the boat. This snapped me out of it, and the feeling of dread went away. I yelled at my friends to get up while I moved to start the engines. One didn't respond at all, while the other drunkenly told me to fuck off. I yelled again that I wasn't fucking around. I was about to pull the starter on the engine and yell again at my friends when I heard something. I froze and listened closely, and there was a very faint splashing sound that was slowly getting closer to the boat. I forgot about yelling at my friends and focused on starting the engine. I pulled and pulled and pulled on the starter, and nothing happened. But in between the pulls, I heard the splashing getting closer. I didn't dare look at the direction of the noise. Finally, the engine started, and I punched it out of there. I must have gone miles before I came to a stop to conserve fuel, and until the sun rose and my friends woke up, I spent the rest of the night scanning the waters just in case. I had to make up a bullshit excuse to explain to my friends why we were so far away from our previous spot. I wanted to tell them, but I doubted they would believe me. When I got home, I did some research, and apparently Native American tribes possibly used the lake as a burial ground. Plus, there are thought to be the bodies of many victims of hurricanes throughout the decades lying in that lake. Fishermen have found many human bones over the years. This was over 6 years ago, and I've yet to set foot near any body of water larger than my shower. No lakes, oceans, rivers, water parks, pools, hot tubs, nothing. I don't blame anyone if they don't believe some random guy on the internet. Many times I tried to write it off as my drunk self seeing things. However, I can't write off the feeling that I had of wanting to jump into the water, with something real or not, that struck me with terror. Thinking about that feeling of wanting to go in the water with whatever was out there chills me to this day. Party Crasher, submitted by Maggie J. At the end of every summer, our neighborhood holds a giant block party. This was usually done at the end of September after everyone was back to school, Labor Day stuff was out of the way, and it was like one last fling before fall really hit. Everyone pitched in. There were dads grilling and smoking food all day, moms baking and setting up tables and all kinds of games, a bounce house, and just a really good time. Last year, a band was hired for the afternoon, and things got rolling on that Saturday. It was great from the first minute, and I was having a blast from the start. There was a big field behind the houses, so there was a water balloon toss that was really fun, and it was then that my friend Paul and I noticed a guy we didn't recognize hanging around the edges of the toss. This wasn't super unusual, as people invited all kinds of friends and family to our party, but this guy was weird in a way, and we noticed he was taking a lot of pictures. I forgot about it to run around with my friends and get something to eat. The band started up and more people showed up throughout the afternoon. When the music stopped and the band took a break, I saw that guy again. He really wasn't talking to anyone. He was just taking more pictures and walking around. No one noticed, but I thought it was weird and said something to my mom. She was a few glasses of wine in and said to not worry about it. My other friend Chrissy and a bunch of us were in the bounce house and just yelling and having fun when the parents said it was time for the littler kids to use the bounce house and we got kicked out. There were about 10 of us just running from yard to yard, playing games and tackling each other. Then Paul said, "Hey, look. That weird guy was at the bounce house and still taking pictures of the kids inside." Then Chrissy said she had to go to the bathroom, and she and 2 other girls took off and ran by the guy on the way to the house. The rest of us took a hot dog break and got some other food and kept joking and badgering Mr. Z about his grill and smoker. He was making pulled pork for dinner. That's when we heard a yell from down the street, and a bunch of parents were gathering around my friend Chrissy. She said she and her friends went into her house to take turns using the bathroom, when one of them, Aaron, said someone had opened the bathroom door while she was going, and an arm with a camera poked in and took a bunch of pictures. Before she could react, the arm went away, and then she screamed. She was crying and telling everyone what had happened. The parents began looking around, and that's when we again mentioned the guy we saw, as he did have a camera. The party kept going, but a group of dads started walking around checking things out. The band started up again, and a guy was doing this crazy drum solo which attracted everyone's attention. When he was done, everyone clapped and he got up and waved and then walked away. The singer said something like, "Wow, that was awesome," and they started playing music again. The dads came back and hadn't found anything, and while the party kept going, there was an uneasiness, and people were looking for this guy in the white shirt and camera. He was nowhere to be found. A couple of hours later, there was another scream from a house between band songs. Another kid had been in his bathroom and said the same thing happened. An arm came in and a camera started taking pictures of him. This really put a halt to the party, and people began looking for this guy more earnestly. Finally, my friend Riley's dad yelled out, and a bunch of other dads began running behind the houses, presumably after someone. We all followed and watched them chase a guy into the fields and woods down a path that led away from our neighborhood. One dad told us to stay where we were, and we stopped at the tree line. After a little while, they came back with nothing and told us to get back to the street. Everyone was now milling around talking about this strange guy. Who he was, where he came from. No one knew him at all. The police were called and they took statements from everyone. The party was kind of subdued when the band guys asked who the crazy drummer was. It didn't take long to put 2 and 2 together. It was the same guy and not part of the band. While the drummer had been organizing some things, he noticed a backpack that wasn't his, and he poked into it to see if there was any ID to see whose it was. There wasn't any ID, but there was a white shirt and a camera. The guy had somehow escaped the first house he had followed Chrissy to, made his way to the stage, and did the drum solo as a distraction of sorts. The police came back and went through the camera and found dozens of pictures of us kids, pictures of inside homes, entrances and windows to the homes, and more. The cops took all the stuff, and that was when the party turned into a block meeting, and they set up a neighborhood watch club. Nothing else happened, but we did try to have more fun. Things in the neighborhood were quiet until just before Halloween. That's when some people started to notice a weird gray minivan cruising the streets. It never stopped, and around the same time they saw this van, a few of the homes where kids lived had been broken into during the day when people were at work and school. Small items, usually kids' clothing, had been stolen, but even that stopped when people started putting in new floodlights and those doorbell cameras started to become popular. That was last year, and the police never found the guy despite the reports that we made. We keep vigilant in our neighborhood and hope that guy never comes back. Hey gang, thanks for listening to this episode of Uncle Josh's True Scary Stories. If you have a true scary story you'd like to hear narrated on this channel, email unclejoshtruescarystories@gmail.com. I read them all. Quick note for everyone who likes to hear Uncle Josh's True Scary Stories in podcast format, we are back up and running on Apple Podcasts. Not sure what happened there, but we can be found there, Spotify, TuneIn, anywhere that you could name. I am there. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to this channel. Leave a comment down below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Follow me on social media. All the links for that are in the description below. And everybody, be excellent to each other. And remember, until next time, be wary of things that go bump in the night. It could be anything. A ghost, a monster, or the guy next door.